What are the best power moves you've ever seen someone do in real life? One of my friend's daughters has hearing aids. They are similar to the ones old people use, but with an extra piece on them. They're not the ones that are attached to your head. If someone is bothering her and she doesn't want to deal with them, she pulls her hearing aids out and keeps doing whatever she was doing. This girl is 8. I have a cochlear implant and I do this sometimes. Probably should stop. I'm 19 now. A friend and I were driving home after a night out, and we get pulled over by the police for speeding. The cop approaches our vehicle, and my friend, the driver, says to the cop, "I didn't even see you. Where were you parked?" The cop responds by saying he was parked at the bottom of an apartment building driveway that has a blind spot. My friend says to the cop, "Well, I own that building. It's private property, and I've asked you guys numerous times not to park there as I don't want my building having a reputation of being a speed trap." A couple of minutes later, after the cop verifies the information, he comes to the car, apologizes, and sends us on our way. The power move here is owning the building. My first boyfriend and I were out at a restaurant in the middle of the week. It was nearly empty, but for some reason the hostess sat us across from the only other couple. We were 18 and the couple was about 30. The guy was talking at length about his boring butt job and the lady was obviously not into it. He was talking so loud that me and my boyfriend, couldn't even have our own conversation. The guy finally shut up and there was an extended silence. After a bit, my BF looked up at me and said, "So, do you put out?" I busted out laughing and the woman at the other table hastily covered her grin. The dude scoffs and says, "Good one buddy," and threw his napkin down like he lost an argument or something. I'm not a man, so I don't know what kind of power play that was, but I will never forget it. In a single sentence, your boyfriend made that man feel both boring and inadequate. Junior year of high school, AP physics class. It's the end of the year, AP tests are over. We have nothing left to do, so our teacher is leading a game of scientist hangman. The puzzle on the board is NRN. The classroom door is open. There's a senior walking down the hallway past the classroom. He takes one glance at the puzzle and yells "Daniel Banuyi" without breaking stride. We had a substitute teacher in 4th grade who ran out of crap for us to do. She started a hangman game with us. Puts up 5 blanks. Kid immediately screams pizza, teacher concedes. Class goes bonkers. My 3-year-old nephew came up to me and said, "Uncle, do you wanna hear a joke?" I responded in my best world-weary voice with, "Kiddo, my whole life is a joke." And without missing a beat, the little crap replies, "Okay, but this is a funny one. Love that kid. Well, the Burns unit has been put on notice and expect you ASAP." I have a good personal one. Worked at a major office retail store for a while in the tech section. Everyone was paid just above minimum wage, except for the department leads, who made $10 an hour. Well, our tech lead moved and they didn't replace him right away, so I busted butt and made sure to fill appropriately. Also coming up was Black Friday, and nobody was allowed to take off. Company policy, no ifs ands or buts, all hands on deck. Well, I asked off anyway, hoping maybe they would let me. My girlfriend's uncle was always gone on deployment and this was one of the few years he would be home for Thanksgiving and I really wanted to finally meet him. They told me no, go back to tech position. I fulfill that duty for about a month as if I was the tech lead, then approach the store manager asking if I can have the position as well as the raise that accompanies it. He sat me down and explained how they weren't sure yet, and I could work really hard for the next 6 months, then they would reevaluate and see if I was fit for the position then. The other department managers all figured I'd be given the job, and were all surprised when it had happened. I smiled and said thank you for your time, walked straight to the work computer we used and typed this exact sentence: store manager's name. This is an official 9-day notice as my last day working here will be the day before Thanksgiving. IKZ. I walk right back into his office after printing it out and hand it to him. He reads it, looks up at me and asks if I can stay for Black Friday. I told him you couldn't pay me enough. Justice Obana. This kid from my class in high school was too late for physics class. When he entered the class, the teacher said, when you are too late, you know you are not supposed to enter that door, Jacob. So, this happened on a summer day, and the fire exit door was open. After 10 minutes we hear this walking sound on the metal steps of the emergency stairs outside. We had class in room 403, the 4th floor. After a while we all see Jacob entering the room from the fire exit like nothing happened and sit down. Dropped my son at preschool early with breakfast. Only other kids there was a girl eating her breakfast at one end of the table. She bats her eyes and says, "You can sit by me," he says. "I like this seat over here, at the other end of the table," and she got up and moved. Dang. I worked at a grocery store with a friend of mine and he wanted a long weekend because he had friends coming into town, so I took over his days for him. Everything was fine. I was still under 40 hours and the days were covered. Although for some reason the store manager was upset about this and was lecturing us about switching days. My friend looked at him in the middle of his rant and said, "Bob, your beard looks great today. We're both straight dudes." He immediately started cracking up and walked away. That was the end of that, and there were no talks about switching days after that. Similar situation in a grocery store. Someone requested a holiday off. The manager yelled and screamed at him for even thinking he could request such a busy day off. The guy responds, "I'm not forcing you to give it to me. This paper is just me making a request to take the day off if the schedule allows. I am simply asking." Manager walked away. When I got fired at my old job, I didn't know they were going to fire me then. They pulled me into a conference room. There was 3 people and me, and the 3 were sitting around the table. One said to me, "Have a seat." I said no and stood while they all talked up at me. I'm glad I went out that way because apparently I was the talk of the company for a few days until the next person quit. It was a super crappy company. So, IDK if this counts, but I used to work retail full time in college. For those who don't know, most retail is like horrendously crappy. Anyways, we had to ask for days off like a month plus in advance, and PTO was basically unusable unless you asked 3 or more months in advance. Of course this led to people being sick all the dang time. Like we were a bunch of middle schoolers or something. It was December, and my family was planning an out of country vacation in late July. So, I put my time off request in the book, mid-December, dated it, and mentioned it in passing to my manager just so he'd have a heads up. Of note, I had plenty of PTO to make this work, either way. So, May rolls around, and they're making the July schedule, and my manager, Bob, says, "Yeah, unfortunately Altotsura, I'm not going to be able to accommodate your time off request next month." Me, "Huh, Bob, there's no one to cover you for a whole week." Me, "Well, I hope you find someone." Bob, "I can't, sorry man, you can't go." Me, "Yeah well, look, it's not a request, but I'm going. It's been on the calendar for like 6 months. Find someone to cover it, or don't, but it's honestly not my problem." Bob, "Well, unfortunately I'm going to have to put you on the schedule anyway, and you can explain to Jen, store MGR, why you won't be at work." Me, "Sure thing, I feel like I'll probably have some pretty bad diarrhea that week, unfortunately." Then I went right upstairs and told her the same thing I told him. It's not a request. I have the PTO, and I put it down 6 months in advance. Find someone to fill in for a week, and if you can't, hire someone new. I took my vacation, and worked there for another year. Had a friend walk up to a girl at a party and say, "You are the hottest girl here and I am the best looking guy. We belong together." He took her home and they are married now. She was the hottest girl there. It's debatable on him. Now that is a power move. Was at a Mexican restaurant on Cinco de Mayo. Place was absolutely packed, yet somehow there were only like 2, maybe 3 waiters on staff. We'd been there like 40 minutes and had drinks, but still hadn't gotten to order food. This dude at the next table stands up, starts taking people's orders and delivering them to the kitchen. But the other waiters seemed like they really appreciated it, because people were starting to get pee until that point. He didn't take my table's order, but he took one nearby and he sounded pretty fun. A friend ran into him a few months ago and said he's really cool. The restaurant made the power play here. They made their service so bad that they managed to get a free server. My boyfriend's 5-year-old niece was sitting on my lap. Her 7-year-old brother wanted to sit on my lap, so she farted on me and was like, guess you'll have to sit in my fart cloud now. Nobody wants to visit me in my little cloud. At a bar, not particularly busy, bartender was talking to some girl across bar, ignoring everybody else who was trying to get drinks. 10 minutes go by, still chatting. Guy reaches across bar and fills himself up from tap. I was at a party in college. One of my friends was chatting up some girl he was into. Another one of our friends went up and pants him. Pants and boxers. My dude didn't freak out or break conversation flow. He just stood there daffy ducking with zero fricks given. And that man got laid that night. There was a post yesterday where somebody was at a party with Jeff Goldblum. When the host introduced JG to them, JG said, my god, oh, yes, of course, like he had heard of the person. They were on cloud 9 until they heard JG say that to everyone he was introduced to. My father told me this story. He had a friend that took philosophy class and they were discussing authority. The teacher made an example. If I say, the class is over, you can leave, you will do it. But if Mark says the same thing, you will stay here. After that, Mark stood up and said the class was over, they could leave, and every student left the room. My father didn't have a lecture at that time, and when he asked his friend why he wasn't in his philosophy class, he told him this story. Haha, what a story, Mark. I was meeting up with my friends at the bar. They had all been there for a while and comprised about 90% of the bar's business. When I walked in, the hostess decided I was going to be the first one charged a cover fee for entry. I told her I wasn't there for their event and just wanted to sit with my friends already at the bar. She told me tough luck basically and that I would have to pay. I yelled over to my friends she wouldn't let me in without paying, and they all just stood up and left so we could go to our favorite bar instead. Was only like a $5 or $10 cover. And instead of getting it, they lost the majority of their current business. About 7 people total, all of whom drink more than they should. My friends made me look like a boss, but it wouldn't have been a power move without them. I'm lucky to have a great group that has each other's back. This is from back in HS in the 90s. I had a friend that was really small who would get picked on often but never did anything about it. Neither did the rest of us when we got picked on. Nothing ever got physical, so who cares? Why start a fight? Use your words, not your fists, etc. One day, we were talking and a big dude that was in his grade grabbed him in a chokehold out of nowhere. No reason at all. My buddy kicked one leg forward and all of a sudden, the big dude was on his back and pinned. My buddy had him by the throat. He said, will you stop it now? The big guy did. Never bugged him again. It so happens that the little guy's dad taught Shotokan and he was absurdly good. I've never seen someone move so fast. Took down a guy that was 75 pounds heavier than him easy. Apparently he helped his dad train students. He'd never brought it up before as it wasn't important to him. Girls and cars were more interesting at the time to us. Years ago, a buddy and stopped in one of the national chain restaurants open 24 hours. Usually the service was pretty decent. Not sure what happened that time. Was a number of people in a kind of addition room off the main area. Got our food and first round of drinks. Buddy wanted a coffee refill. They didn't leave us the carafe like some do now. No waitress, nobody checked in the room for a while. Heard other people commenting they wanted more coffee as well. I got up, walked to some little station off the kitchen, maybe been a while. Grabbed a pot of coffee and walked back to the room. Poured my buddy's coffee and then poured everybody else who wanted it. Got some laughing thank yous. It was a small thing but funny as frick to me. Driving somewhere with my brother in the middle of the night. Stop at the gas station. Kid runs up to the car as we're going to drive away. My brother rolls down the window. Kid asks my brother to buy him smokes. My brother tells him straight to frick off. Kid tells my brother to frick off for disrespecting him, and that he best drive off like a bee or him and his buddies will beat us like the pussies we are. Some crap like that. My brother says some crap like, "Oh sorry sir, I guess I need my buddies then," and flashes his badge at the kid. Kid's eyes went huge and he ran. Thanks to you, Penelope Parrell. Roll not roll. Probably in class. We know how when you ask if you can use the bathroom, teachers are like, can you? Well, one classmate, when he asked and our teacher said that, was like, yes I can, and just left. So, I'm in the US Army and it is really easy to get kicked out of the army these days. Recently, an investigation got started on some of the guys I work with. They were accused of doing and selling drugs, but there was no evidence to support this. No drugs, not positive urinalysis, no paraphernalia, nothing. However, due to an attempted power move by the chain of command, these guys were all gonna get kicked out. Well, obviously they all lawyered up and started defending themselves. This whole process took so long that a couple of these guys were set to get out of the army anyway, so the chain of command extends them so that they can continue to chapter them. That's when crap starts popping off. Soldier 1 finds a regulation that says that you cannot extend a soldier with the express intention of chaptering them. He prints it out and drops it on the commander's desk and starts spazzing out. This is the same commander that extended him so that he couldn't leave the army and forced his pregnant wife to drive a U-Haul full of stuff across the country to his home of record. This regulation goes all the way up to the brigade commander and is still under review. He's gonna win though. Soldier 2 and 3 wrote their congressmen. Soldier 3 went as far as to put in a complaint to the Inspector General, which is a huge problem for the chain of command. Soldier 3, who was the first to be accused and thus started this whole thing, goes to trial to defend himself, and his lawyer absolutely demolishes the accuser in court. Today, Soldier 3's charges were dropped, which essentially is paving the way for both Soldier 1 and Soldier 2 to get away with a mean butt dub. That's a power move. If you can cite a regulation and you know you are 100% in the right, you can take that crap right up the chain all the way to the top. Getting the IG on board was especially genius. That's how commanders get relieved. My old company required a doctor's note if you missed 3 days sick. We also had a PTO system, meaning that our sick time and vacation were the same. On the 3rd day I called my boss and told them I wasn't feeling better. They asked me to email them a doctor's note. I told them I didn't go the doctors, it was a flu, you just have to wait it out. Basically the VP that required I get to note or come in. So I came in my PJs, clocked in, filled out the PTO request for the rest of the week, puked in my waste basic, which started a sympathy pukes, and was sent home for the day, because guess what, I was sick. It might not be the biggest of all the power moves, but I always appreciate it when somebody shows up late drinking a nice coffee. If it was a regular coffee, you could assume that they got the cup a while ago and are still carrying it. When you hear those ice cubes rattling around in the cup though, you know for sure that they got that drink pretty recently, even though they were running late. It's a real say something move. Subtle, petty, I like it. I once watched a guy eat a pencil because someone offered it to him for lunch. He had something to eat, but he still ate the pencil. Had a friend who worked as a fellow HVAC tech in Dallas. He had problems with this restaurant towing him while he was parked at his GF's place. She lived upstairs and she had 2 parking spaces with her condo. He got towed one too many times, so he had a source for the odorant they use in natural gas, and he put a few drops near the outdoor seating area and waited. Sure enough, the fire dep came and shut the restaurant down for a weekend while they investigated. Then he started parking at a pay lot 2 blocks away, and he started towing the restaurant patrons' cars when they parked in his GF's assigned parking. Cops got involved and the cops took his side. He was later able to get a group of condo owners together and go after that restaurant for having them towed from the spots that they actually owned. They were able to get their liquor license suspended for 180 days. It put them out of business. God, that got me a raging justice boner. This is something that I did myself and it isn't even that great of a story, but I want to tell it. One time I was at a bar with this girl I was hanging out with along with some other friends. There were 6 of us in total. At some point, the girl's ex walks in and comes over to our table to make awkward conversation. The girl was clearly uncomfortable and so was everyone else. So I go to the bar and order 6 shots and bring them back to the table. I hand a shot to each person in my group and hold mine out for a toast. The girl's ex got the hint and left us alone. You brought 6 shots and a clue to that table. Smooth one. Nice work. Was in college doing my work study job as a campus security patrol guy. We just walked around the dorms to check to make sure all the doors were locked and everything was quiet on the midnight to 6 AM shift. had radios to call the cops, but no weapons, badges or authority. We had to keep a paper log on 3-part forms of everything we found and report our location whenever we were randomly called on the radio from base. One morning after my shift I got called into the office of the fat piece of crap Southern sheriff wannabe who ran the campus security department. He told me I was fired for failing to turn in the log for my partner and I from the night before. He found out that I was friends with one of the other guys and he didn't like people working shifts with our friends. I had turned in my log, but of course it was nowhere to be seen when he showed me a pile of the other team's logs. But what old WW didn't know was that I was active in student government and had gotten acquainted with the dean of student housing. One day in his office I'd seen piles of the pink copies of the campus security logs and he told me that they come over first thing every morning. I trotted over there as soon as I left the chief's office and sure enough, there was the pink copy of my log from the night before. The dean called up the chief and told him that there must be some mistake about my log because he was looking at the copy that had come from the chief's office no more than an hour earlier. My firing was rescinded and I never could get that old butthole chief to say another word to me or look me in the eye ever again. I had that job for as long as I wanted it from that point forward. It wasn't so much a power move as much as it was just a sheer lack of fricks to give. I was taking a test in high school when I noticed someone else in the class shuffling through his backpack. Without saying a word he pulled out a newspaper, kicked back just to read the paper instead of taking his test. It was so simple but effective. In his own way he calmly erased the serious atmosphere our teacher was trying to instill. I always thought exams should be in a more chill environment, like there's already enough pressure. We don't need your glaring. In grade 4, a kid in my class asked to use the bathroom and the teacher said something along the lines of "Too many people have gone already, you'll have to wait." Little guy pee on the floor right in front of the teacher. I worked at an ice cream store when I was fresh out of high school. The dude that ran it was a freaking idiot and the store barely functioned. I was scheduled far more than anyone else. It was supposed to be a part-time job but I was working 39 hours a week. One day me and the owner were closing and I shook his hand as we were about to part ways and said, "Alright man, I'll see you tomorrow." He looks at me quizzically and says, "Are you scheduled tomorrow?" "Yeah, I think so," I said. He replied, "You're not on the schedule, but I'll call you tomorrow to let you know one way or the other." So the next day rolls around and I didn't get a call from him, so at 6 PM I go out to dinner with my girlfriend and her parents and he calls me in the middle of it absolutely livid and starts yelling at me because I didn't show up. I reminded him of what he said the previous night and he stammers, "Why yeah well you're fired," I said. "You have a bunch of trainees who haven't been working more than 3 days and you have me. Good luck making a profit when your other employees don't even know how to work the register yet." And he just kind of goes quiet for a few seconds and said, "I'll see you Monday," and hangs up. I worked there for a few more months until one day him and I were working together and he was taking inventory. He walks out from the back as I was helping a group of customers and says, "Legato, have you been stealing candy bars?" I looked at him, then looked out at the crowded store and just walked out, dropping my apron on the floor as I went. About 6 months later the store burned down, likely for the insurance money. It was supposed to be a part-time job but I was working 39 hours a week. The old "you're working full-time but technically are part-time so we don't have to pay jack crap in benefits." How to exploit workers 101. Not me, but a coworker. She's in court and arguing with the opposing counsel about some settlement and gives them the "take it or I walk" speech and they refuse. As she's making the power walk out of the courtroom, her high heel shoe slips off her foot. Without missing a beat, tripping, or even turning her head, she tells her assistant who was walking out with her get that and kept walking. I can just hear her walking away. Click, thud, click, thud. Poker night at a friend's house. $40 buy-in, winner takes all, unless the last 2 people decide to split it, with 8 people playing. By the time it got down to 3 people, we had been playing for almost 5 hours already. I wanted to go home and had the most chips, so I said, "Let's split it between us 3. I have the most chips, it'll take 40% and you 2 take 30% each." They both said no. I asked the same question 4 times in the next hour but my chips went down a lot by then. It got down to me and another person. Everyone knew I wanted to go home because it was late. This other guy looks at me and says, "We can stay here forever playing just the two of us. Let's split if 50/50 and call it a night." Everyone was like, "Okay, seems fair." I took one look at my chips and said no, 70/30, and everyone was like, "What?" He actually caved and I went home with over $200. You guys should just set a time limit and then when time ends everyone takes home the value of their chips. We also allowed people to just buy back in if they lost all their chips too fast. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.